Hello everyone, and welcome to screencast number 4 for chapter 18. There might be a little bit of an overlap with this, and I want to go back and talk about radiative forcing, and then we'll continue on from here. So scientists need to measure the degree of impact of factors that exert any sort of influence on the Earth's temperature. And they use radiative forcing as one of the tools in measuring the amount of thermal energy that whatever the factor is causes. So we have positive forcing, which warms the surface, and we have negative forcing, which cools the surface area. So scientists, when they collect this data, they try to sum up the effects of all the factors. So what they've discovered is right now the Earth is experiencing radiative forcing that is retaining about 1.6 watts. Sorry about that interruption. It's about 1.6 watts per meter squared. And what that means is that the planet is receiving and retaining 1.6 watts per meter square of thermal energy, more than it is emitting into space. So it's warming. When we look back in the pre-industrial Earth in 1750, which was in balance, we were receiving the same amount of radiation as we were emitting. So there has been a significant change, enough to alter our climate. Right now, the energy that we are getting is equivalent to power and heat and light about 140 incandescent light bulbs. So that's a significant amount that we're talking about. Okay, we've seen this graph before, so I'm not going to go over it again. So what this means is the tropospheric warming is going to transfer more water into the air. That's going to affect the increased water vapor that we're going to get within our, my mind just went off a little bit, in our blanket, in our greenhouse gases that we have. We're really not too certain about the total impact, because when we think of water vapor, we think of water vapor as a good source, but there's two possibilities that can result. A positive feedback loop, which means that more water vapor, more warming, more evaporation, more water vapor, or a negative feedback loop. That means more water vapor, more clouds, shade and cool the earth, and less evaporation. Because of these feedback loops, minor modifications of the atmosphere can lead to major effects on the climate. So anything we do can impact that climate. Okay, with that little refresher, we've talked about the Milankovitch cycles, so we're going to skip ahead and we're going to look at the different climate and talk about proxy indicators that tell us about our past climate. And I find this very interesting that they're able to do this. So we're going to be looking at the paleoclimate, and that is the climate of the geological past. And it gives us a baseline to compare to today's climate. So this means that we're going to be taking ice cores, and we're going to be taking cores from deep down in the ocean in order to find out what the climate was like. And there's certain things within those core samples that we can look for. And then we're going to consider proxy indicators. And proxy indicators are indirect evidence that serve as a substitute for direct measurements. So these are going to be things that shed light on the past climate. So if we're taking core samples under the ocean, one of the things that we can look at is this really tiny little crustacean that the shells are made up of calcium carbonate, and they're really, really tiny and small, like a little bead. And we can tell by the amount of carbon that is inside their shells what the temperature was around that time. And in the same idea, when we go into the ice samples and the core samples from the ice sheets, we can look for the presence of carbon dioxide bubbles that are trapped in the ice, which also is going to shed some light on what the climate was. And just like we know rocks go in layers over the years, this sediment and these ice samples are going to be doing the same thing. So as I suggested, ice caps and ice sheets and glaciers are going to be holding clues to the Earth's climate history because they're going to trap bubbles, and those bubbles are going to consist of carbon dioxide in the ice cores, and they provide a time scale of the atmospheric composition and greenhouse gas concentrations that were present, and they can give us an idea of what the temperature trends were. The snowfalls, as you can imagine, trapped in these ice sheets. Compact snow is going to be present, so they can tell how much snowfall was present. Any solar activity, because they can look at the melting, and they can also look at frequencies of fires. So what the ice cores enable us to do is to go back into time about 800,000 years. And this is what a core sample would look like. And this is what the micrograph. So when we put this underneath a special type of, it's not a microscope, but within a special machine, we're going to be able to see everything that is trapped in these different colors, and these bubbles indicate different substances that are present. They actually contain the small samples of the ancient Earth's atmosphere that you're going to see, that the scientist is going to see within that. We talked about cores and sediment beds. Not only are they going to have the little crustaceans present, but they're going to conserve pollen grains and other plant remnants that are going to be trapped. So we can examine the type of plants that are around, the special kind of plant species that happen to be in that particular area, and we know certain plants are adapted to certain climates, and we can get an idea of what the climate was for that time. We can even go back to our tree rings. When we look at our big old trees, we know that they form rings, and the rings are consistent with the amount of precipitation that's present. So when there's a lot of rain, the rings are wider, and when there's less rain, like droughts, the rings are going to be smaller. And you can even look at trees. If there's been a fast-moving fire going through, we can see fire within the history of those rings. We can look within arid regions, and pack rats carry seeds and plants to their middens or their dens. So we can dig up and look at these old dens, and we can see what kind of plants had been present because they're preserved there for a long time. So the researchers are going to gather all of this data together. They're going to look at past ocean conditions, they're going to study the coral reefs, and when they take this whole sampling of these records, they can get a global perspective of what the climate was like thousands of years ago. So what we have seen is there have been fluctuations in weather throughout our history. We have seen that there is a direct correlation between atmospheric carbon dioxide, which began in 1958 from the past, and we can see that these concentrations are increasing over the years. And we have also kept really good records of temperature, since our predicting weather has improved over the last 100 years, and we can see definite changes that are happening within our climate system. We also can look at records from our economic activities, and we can go a few hundred years back for this when records were really starting to be taken. We can see that fishers have recorded the timing of sea ice formation. They used this so that they were able to know when it was the best time of fishing, so we can go back to those historical records. Winemakers, we've had winemakers around for thousands of years, and they would keep track of the precipitation so that they would know when the best growing seasons and the length of their growing seasons were. So we can use these other records as well that can tell us about climate change. And this is a graphic that was done, I forget the exact scientist name who made this model. Charles Keeling, it just came to me, was the scientist who came up with this with collecting data. And this is showing the increase in carbon dioxide from 1960 to about 2015. And you'll notice the red line shows the increase. These lines, the blue lines that go up and down, show the change in seasons. And it's almost like during the warmer season, the Earth inhales and takes in carbon dioxide, and during the colder seasons, it exhales and releases the carbon dioxide. So this is the fluctuation that you're seeing as it goes up and increases. And what we are seeing right now is we have almost 3 times the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and it correlates with the increase of temperature. So to understand climate functioning and to predict future, scientists simulate climate processes using computer programs. And these computer programs are referred to as climate models, and they combine what is known about the atmospheric circulation, ocean circulation, atmosphere and ocean interactions, and the feedback cycles to simulate climate processes. It requires a little bit of manipulation of vast amounts of data and some complex mathematical equations, a task that was not possible until the advent of modern computers. So they essentially provide information to the model. Climate modelers will, these are the scientists. They will set up rules for the simulation and then they'll let it run. They strive for the best accuracy that they can get in making predictions about the climate conditions. If a model accurately reconstructs current climate and it's based on well-established data from the past, then we have a reason to believe that it simulates climate mechanisms realistically, and it may accurately predict the future of climate. There are still some challenges that remain for climate modelers. As you can imagine, the climate system is very complex. There's some uncertainties that remain in our understanding of feedback processes, but yet our knowledge of climate improves and our computing of the conditions intensifies, and we're certain that we're on the right track in getting the best information available. There is evidence that climate conditions have changed since industrialization has happened, since we've been changing our landscape. The fishermen in Maldives and ranchers in Texas and homeowners in Florida are all seeing these changes. There's been extreme weather events that are part of the pattern that is supported from this tremendous volume of scientific evidence that we're gathering. So our current and future trends seem to be continuing with the extreme conditions. Okay, so I'm going to end this here, and we will pick up with the evidence for climate change.